All right, let's go ahead and continue with part 9 of Rome. And now we're going to be looking at trans-regional trade networks. So trans means across, right? So we're looking at region trade networks that went across different regions. So that went from the Mediterranean and the Middle East to South Asia or to East Asia or to Southeast Asia or Central Asia, right? So this is trans-regional. We could also say inter-regional or long-distance trade networks. So first we're going to look at the land routes. And the land route is called the Silk Roads, right? And it basically went from China in East Asia all the way to the Mediterranean, right? Which is where the Roman Empire would be. And a whole bunch of places in between. So this connection. It's not really a road like an expressway or highway. It's basically just a series of connections, of rest stops along the way, of people willing to allow merchants to travel through their territory and pay taxes, of course. But this system is first set up during the time of China, right? During their classical king dynasty called the Han China, and during the Roman Empire. And it connected all these different parts of the world, right? It connects, the East and the Southeast and the Middle East, right? And Europe and North Africa and Central Asia, right? So this is a Eurasian, right? Europe and Asian, right? Europe and Asia trade network. And partly the reason is that we have these strong empires because we need a strong empire that can protect merchants, that can keep roads, working and not falling apart, can build bridges to cross over, rivers and stuff. So during this time, we have multiple empires. Right? We have the Romans here in the Mediterranean, right? We have the Sassanids here in Persia, the Guptas here in India, right? And they have the Chinese, the Han, over here in China. So these empires protect their borders, protect the merchants, protect travel, the trade, right? And it's important to notice that the merchants, they don't travel the whole thing. So if you're a Chinese merchant, right, you wouldn't go from China all the way to the Mediterranean, right? You, as a Chinese merchant, you'll get your wagon, you fill it up with stuff like silk, right, and you would travel to around here in Central Asia. And then you would sell that silk or you would trade it for other goods, and then you will walk back home, right? And this was, few months travel back and forth. And then the merchant here would get that silk, right, or these goods from that Chinese merchant and make the next stop to Persia or to India and trade it off there and trade it for something else that they could make money off of. And then some other merchant would take it from here all the way to the Mediterranean. So the point is that by the time these goods reached Rome, reached the Mediterranean, they've been passed down from merchant to merchant to merchant to merchant. And each time the value, the expense, the cost of these exotic luxury goods increases. So by the time silk and spices makes its way all the way over here to Rome, it's expensive. And only the richest of the rich, the wealthy, the upper class, the elites, the patricians can afford it. So trade makes people wealthy, right? Trade makes people wealthy. Because all those merchants, they gotta stop and eat. They gotta rest. They have to be protected, so they hire guards. They need animals, so they're gonna trade for animals, right? They need supplies, they need food, they need water. So you have all these cities, these rest stops that we see along the Silk Road grow, right? Because those merchants are not just there for trade; they're there for a few days. They need entertainment, they need luxury, they need food and water, right? And of course they need to pay taxes. So we have cities like Samarkand, right, which is in Central Asia, right around here. Samarkand becomes a major city because of all these people coming in and out, in and out, in and out, right? And we have all these small kingdoms, all these states, right, throughout Central Asia, right? And they become wealthy because of all the taxes that they're charging. Major cities grow bigger and bigger and bigger, right? On one end, we have all the way over here, right? Actually, this would reach all the way around here, will be Constantinople, right? A major Roman city, Constantinople, right? And this is one of the endpoints of the Silk Road. Another endpoint would be Chang'an, the capital of Han China. And these places would be huge. Lots of people living there. So it wasn't just, even though the richest of the rich were the ones who were buying these luxury goods, from faraway places, right? A lot of people benefited along the way. So if you're a silk, producer, you make stuff out of silk, you're going to make money because there's a demand for it, and people are going to travel thousands of miles just to sell that silk that you make. Now the merchants, they will travel in caravans, right, for safety. So they would travel together in caravans, a group of merchants, and they would hire guards to protect them so that they don't get robbed in the middle of the the trade network, in the middle of the road. So here we see the city of Samarkand, right? What it would have looked like back then, right? This is another picture of Samarkand at a later point, right? So you see all these merchants, right? Horses, camels, right? These large animals carrying lots of stuff, right? This would be the city of Chang'an in China, huge city, right? Hundreds of thousands of people. Constantinople, same thing. And you notice how they have the same type of uh, race. This was another Circus Maximus, or the Hippodrome was the name for the one in Constantinople. But we see this, and we see the influence of the Romans, right? So these land routes, right, connecting these faraway places, right, these trade networks, bringing goods from all over the world, right, to each other. But we also see the development of sea routes, right? And this right here, this is the Indian Ocean, of course, and this is known as the Indian Ocean Trade Network, right? And so we start seeing all these little cities start popping up. All these little cities start popping up, these coastal cities, these port cities, right? From East Africa over here, right? To North Africa, to Arabia in the Middle East, Persia in the Middle East, right? All over India, Southeast Asia, all the way to China. So you have these ships that are now going to sail across this Indian Ocean, across all these seas, right? And just like the merchants of the Silk Road, they wouldn't travel the whole way. So if you were a Chinese sailor, you wouldn't go from China all the way to Africa, right? These people will go from here to here, from here to here, from here to here. And so we see a lot of goods being exchanged, right? Out of East Africa, slaves and ivory and gold, right? People want slaves, people want ivory, right? Which is made from elephants, elephant tusks, and gold. These are luxury goods. From Persia and Arabia, we have jewelry, we have gold, we have carpets, incense, right? Those things you burn to make your house smell good. From Southeast Asia, we have spices like cloves and cinnamon, nutmeg and ginger, right? Make your food taste better. From China, a lot of spices as well, but also silk. That's the number one thing. It's called the Silk Road, right? From India, pepper, cotton, pearls, ivory, right? So these are all goods that people want, and people are going to trade, and they're going to sail across the seas to trade it. And all these ports become wealthy. All these ports also become very much diverse, right? And it's all because of winds. Because there's these winds, these seasonal winds called the monsoons, right? And remember, these ships, they don't have motors, they don't have engines. So the only way to power a ship is through the sails. That means through the wind power. So half the time of the year, right, the wind circulates in a pattern, right, from one point of the Indian Ocean to another point in the Indian Ocean. So if you're a merchant, you will sail, for example, from East Africa to India, and you have to kind of like, you're stuck there for a few months, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, before the winds can send you back home, right? So while you're living there, what's going to happen? Well, you're going to meet the people of India, right? You might settle down, you might get married, you might have kids. So what we start seeing is we have a very diverse population across these trade networks because of all these intermingling of people, right? They start settling down, having kids, they learn languages, they learn religions, right? And these become centers of commerce, centers of trade. And not only are stuff being traded, but ideas as well, right? Ideas are being traded. So it's not just stuff, but it's also ideas, right? So an idea, a technology, for example, is the horse collar, right? So imagine this is what the collar would look like, but it's obviously not on horses. But imagine you have these large animals, these large oxen or cows or whatever, right? And in the past, they would pull all these heavy weight stuff for you, right? Like on wagons or carts or plows or whatever. But in doing so, they would kind of get choked, and because they'll put all this pressure on their neck. But the horse collar or the collar allows them to put the pressure on the shoulders, so that it means they can do more work. The more work the animal does, the more productivity your land has, right? And the horse collar is a Chinese invention and makes its way across Asia, into Europe, into Africa. Rice, which originates from China, makes its way into India and grows there wonderfully, and the population of India will grow. The stirrup, this thing right here, this little thing right there, changes history. And this was an invention from Central Asia where they have a lot of horses. That's where the horse originates from Central Asia. But the stirrup allows the person riding the horse to control the horse and stay mounted and not fall off by just using their legs, right? Instead of holding on with their arms and their hands. That means you can do other stuff while riding the horse, like fight, like shoot a bow and arrow. So, new technology, new crops, new ideas are spreading, right? People learn about the monsoon winds. People learn how to navigate, not get lost in the giant oceans, right? Using technologies like the compass, which is from China, or the astrolabe, right, which is a Greek and a Middle Eastern invention. Of course, the compass tells you, north, west, south, and east. The astrolabe tells you how far north or how far south you've gone from the equator. The rudder, another Chinese invention, allows the ship to steer, right? Kind of like a steering wheel. The lateen sails, these triangular sails you see here, right? They maximize the wind current. So all this new technology is spread all over the trade network of the Indian Ocean, and people are using these new technologies to expand trade, right? So from China, we see silk, spices, and gold. From China and India, they make their ways into the Mediterranean. The Romans love this stuff. They absolutely love it. Because if you can afford silk and you can afford nice food with spices, you can show off to everyone how wealthy you are, right? We see new stuff like fruits and vegetables, rice and citrus, right? This stuff did not exist in the Mediterranean. A lot of fruits and vegetables, right? It made its way to the Mediterranean thanks to trade. All right. So there you have the formation of the trade networks. Remember, there's the land route called the Silk Roads, and the maritime one, the water one, the ocean one called the Indian Ocean Trade Network. More trade, more stuff, more wealth, more ideas, and everything would change thanks to that. All right. We'll talk about more next time.